That always freaks me out.
Yeah.
I always feel like I should be hitting leave meeting when it says that.
I'm out of here.
And
Hi.
good night. I bid you all farewell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we don't have, I guess Robin's not here tonight. I don't know what's going on with her. I know that Brad's not going to be here. He's got dinner with his brother tonight. So he's in Ohio. He's going to be here until 28th. We should probably try to get hooked up with him at some point. Maybe next week. All right. Well, then I guess we'll just get into the 10th Amendment. Big one, I think. I think it's one of the bigger. Now, it goes in conjunction with the 9th. If you remember last week, we talked about the 9th Amendment, which made sure that just because it doesn't say it in the Constitution doesn't mean we don't have those rights, right? That protected the individual. 10th Amendment's going to protect the states. Same line of thinking. But the 10th Amendment's, I think, out of all of the amendments, is probably the most violated currently today. And I don't know how to get back to it. I mean, that's a discussion that we should probably all be having with our senators, with our congressmen, with our states. We are so far gone from what the 10th Amendment was supposed to be. So let's get into what it says first off. And this is it. This is all the 10th Amendment says. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That's it. That's the whole thing. There's no clauses to it. It is short, simple, sweet. Now, this is what's known as a rule of construction, in that it does not add or subtract from the Constitution. But what it does is, what a rule of construction basically does is tell you how the Constitution is to be followed, how it's set up. All right. And this was important when they were making the Constitution. You remember that we had half the folks, maybe not quite half, but half of them wanted no Bill of Rights added because they thought that it was going to be dangerous. And we had the other half that wanted the Bill of Rights. So this was another one of those, we'll add it, but we're going to put this 10th Amendment in there. So James Madison, I think when we're talking about the 10th Amendment, I'm going to have more quotes in this one than I have normally, because I think it's important to see how the founders were thinking and what their mindset was when they were writing this. And James Madison here, and this was the quote I used today, the full quote that I used today on the page. His quote is, "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite." And that quote goes on. I can give me a second here. Let me pull it up because I probably should have included the whole quote, but it was so long. So what the whole thing says is that the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which last the power of taxation will, for the most part, be connected. The powers reserved for the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. So basically, what Madison is saying here is, look, there's only a few things, and we went over those things, right? In Article 1, Section 8, what the government's allowed to do. They're allowed to levy war. They're allowed to levy taxes. They're allowed to regulate commerce. But that's really, I mean, in a nutshell, that's really about it. And what he's saying is that, man, everything else, it has to do with life and liberty and property. That is all up to the states. The freedom for the people is all up to the states. It is not up to the federal government to be getting into the everyday lives of man. And I think it's important that we know where the founders came from on this. While I was researching for today, there was an article I came across in the Atlantic from 2011. I can either post it or you guys can just, you can find it. Maybe Renee can find it, put it in the chat. Or in this article, they have a name for people that are advocating for the 10th Amendment. They call us tenthers. And this is 2011. And they equate it to, and they actually use the words extremist movement. And that those that believe in the 10th believe that the states retain all the rights and the federal government can't do anything that's not listed in the Constitution. They classify as extremists. And that's only gotten worse as the days have gone on. But when you go back and you start looking at the quotes from all the founders, these guys, I guess they were extremists, right? I mean, they were breaking away from Great Britain, but none of these guys held those extremist views. I mean, as we go through these quotes, you're going to see they felt very strongly in the fact that the federal government is to be limited, and it's certainly not to be what it is today. So before I move on, does anybody have anything you want to add? Anything you think I'm wrong on? Do you think I'm a right-wing extremist?
Important right now with what's going on.
With what's going on with what?
I think he froze.
Oh, well, he's right. And we're going to get into all this stuff. There's a whole lot going on right now where this is important.
Oh, and you know what? I think a lot of the states have been giving up their power for funds.
They have been. They've been coerced into doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you don't follow what we tell you to do, you're not going to get your highway funds. You're not going to get your education funds. You're not going to get, whatever. So the states just go along.
Sounds like extortion to me.
It is.
I think a lot of the federal funds at the state level, they should go away. The state should fund itself.
For sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
100%. And I think you're starting to see the pushback from the states. There's more states that are now pushing back with 10th Amendment arguments. Oregon, I know, and I didn't read the case. I see that Oregon just filed another 10th Amendment violation against the federal government last year. But you see a lot of these states, especially with the voting, all the voting stuff that's going on now, these states are starting to push back. So hopefully they push back before it's too late. I mean, because we're getting close.
Well, it's good to hear that there are still states pushing back. I mean, you think in today's society, I mean, like they would just roll over.
I feel like it's not states. I feel like it's not that there's still states that are pushing back. I feel like states are finally starting to push back, like Jeff said. I mean, they're sucking
that federal teat.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to get off of it.
They rely on that federal money.
I think we're fortunate in that a lot of legislatures in the states are realizing that it's now or never. They're going to lose it all if they don't fight for everybody and for them and for the state itself.
Well, and it is a big gamble for these states to go against the government because they got to come up with these funds somewhere, right? Now, does that mean your state taxes go up? Maybe, but I don't have a problem with my state taxes going up as much as I have a problem with my federal taxes going up.
I mean, I think that people are more inclined. Yeah, people are more inclined if they know that their state is looking out for them.
Well, and I think you're willing to pay your state taxes because you live in this state.
Exactly.
All of your money is coming back to you in the state. Whereas when you're paying your federal taxes, it's going to North Dakota for some
it's going out of the country too.
It's going out of the country. When we pay our Ohio State taxes, that most of that money is staying right here. I mean, it's going to our roads, it's going to our schools, it's going to, so.
Yeah, that's why I've never had a problem, with city taxes. I don't have a problem paying city taxes because you see the return usually. Right. Because it's right there in front of you. You see the return on it. So
everything we're saying here, we're going to get into. You guys are making the case for me right now.
Let me, if I may, let me read a relevant quote here that I found before we move on. If
you read one of my quotes, I'm going to be so pissed. Go ahead.
Are you reading anything from the United States versus Sprague, 1931?
I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I don't think so.
This is from United States versus Sprague, 1931. The 10th Amendment was intended to confirm the understanding of the people at the time the Constitution was adopted, that powers not granted to the United States were reserved to the states or to the people. It added nothing to the instrument as originally ratified. And it goes on to say, the amendment states but a truism that all is retained which has not been surrendered. There is nothing in the history of its adoption to suggest that it was more than a declaratory of the relationship between the national and state governments as it had been established by the Constitution. So that shows clearly that even as late as 1931, it seemed very obvious to those people that states should have separate powers and not be intruded upon, you know, and to go so far as to say that the need for the 10th isn't even necessary because they believe that that exists in itself in the Constitution. Shows
Well, and that's what the
you-
Federalists believe. That's what the Federalists
Right.
believe through the whole thing, is that there
Right.
was no need to even have the 10th. There was no need to have a Bill of Rights. Because
Right.
if the Constitution did not expressly say that the federal government is allowed to do these things, they're just simply not allowed to do it. There's no reason to have a 10th Amendment to say that, because the document actually, that is what it's for. It is a contract between us and the federal government, and this spells out what you're allowed to do.
Right.
Well, having the
From,
10th there
from-
though is a CYA thing though, just ensuring that that's how
Kind
it
of like,
works.
it's kind of like the
And if
reminder.
you
amendment.
remember when we talked about it, though, the anti-federalists, what they were worried about was that if we did not have a Bill of Rights there, that all those rights that are inalienable that were given to us by our Creator were just going to be trampled on, because it was saying that they weren't allowed. They picked the most important of those rights and put those in there. But then you have the Ninth
Right.
Amendment saying that, look, this is not an all-inclusive list.
Right, right.
But and obviously the Federalists are worried that, look, if we put a Bill of Rights in there, the federal government is going to read that as this is
Right.
the all-inclusive list.
Right. Here's
You
one
know.
more quote and I'll get out of the way. This is from Annals of Congress, 1791. Quote, interference with the power of the states was no constitutional criterion of the power of Congress. If the power was not given, Congress could not exercise it. If given, they might exercise it, although it should interfere with the laws or even the constitutions of the states. That's pretty hardcore states' rights.
Yeah. And I think all these quotes are important because, like I said, that article from the Atlantic makes it sound like we're a bunch of crazy, you know, I mean, they actually call us tenthers.
Right. No, this establishes the actual history and the intent of the not just the Constitution, but this amendment to cement it.
I feel like did I cut somebody off there? Jeff, did you have something to say?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Helicopter's got him.
All right.
David Davis, it's nice to have you back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
This is the David Davis I expect right here. Boom.
Cool.
All right. All right. So what it means, and we've kind of talked about what it means, right? 10th Amendment spells out the very foundation of the Constitution, and that's what it was designed to do. It was there to tell you what the foundation, what the Constitution was built on. It limits the federal government to only being allowed the authority granted to it in the Constitution. 1816, Jefferson said that a republic is evidently restrained to very narrow limits of space and population. I doubt if it would be a practicable,
Practicable.
No,
Easy for you to say.
I know, I'm not
Practicable.
even drinking yet.
Let's get a
Practicable.
comment on that, being water or not.
No, it's just water. I doubt it would be practicable beyond the extent of a New England township. He also said that a democracy is the only pure republic, but impractical beyond the limits of a town. So what they believed was that, look, the republic is for the states, that if the federal government tries to run a republic, it's going to get out of control. It's going to get too big, which is why they limited their power from the first place. They believed that your local governments, your state governments, you were in a lot better place to be able to control those governments than you are to be able to control an out of control federal government, which is what we're seeing right now. founders believed that for a republic to work, it had to be controlled at the local level, and that if it ever got to the federal level, it would be destroyed. George Mason, my man, said that from the nature of man, we may be sure that those who have power in their hands will not give it up while they can retain it. On the contrary, we know that they will always, when they can, rather increase it. And he's 100% right. I mean, you look at what's going on right now in Congress,
Yeah.
what's going on in
He nailed it.
Washington, DC. I mean, that
You
is
nailed
it
it.
right there. They're not going to give it up. And not only are they not going to give it up, they are going to increase it if they have the chance, which is why we have the Leviathan that we have in Washington, DC right now. I don't know if I have it in here, and I don't remember who said it. It was one of the founders who said it, that he regarded our representatives at the federal level not as congressmen or as not that was their job, but he regarded them as ambassadors, simply as ambassadors for the state and for the people. That was it. Their whole job was to be nothing more than to go and exact our will at the federal level.
And then go back to the damn farm.
And then go back to the farm. And that's what they said, and that's what it was. You were going to church with these folks. You were working with these folks. They were your neighbors. And now, I mean, now that they hold themselves.
Well, and
highlight
it's public
loyalty.
service, not a career.
Well, allegedly, it's a career now. It's
Oh, it's a
supposed to
career.
be
Well,
public
right,
service.
but I mean, the whole point of it was to be a public servant. But
Term
now it's
limits.
a career.
Convention of States, term limits.
Well, for sure.
And it
I
even
mean,
happens at the city level where there's certain people that it's a career to them.
well, and yeah. And,
Golly.
but man, we allow that to happen though. North Ridgeville got passed by in the night. That's the city I work in. We got passed by in the night by Avon, by.
Oh, yeah.
Lakes. And
Yep.
the reason we got passed by is because we had the same people who'd been there forever that thought North Ridgeville should have been the 1960s North Ridgeville instead of the 1990s North Ridgeville. And I mean, we have a road to nowhere off of one of our roads off Lear-Nagel. And that road to nowhere has infrastructure. There's a road there. It has fire hydrants. You walk through the woods. There's fire hydrants through the woods. So this company had come in and they were going to put in the big shopping area, huge car lot. And one of our council people at the time decided to play hardball with them. I mean, this was a national company. And she thought that because they had the road and the infrastructure in there that she could start, pushing them around, and they just walked away from it. She didn't know how to deal with businesses that wanted to come in. And that has been our problem at the local level forever. But we could have controlled that and we didn't. Now, maybe that's me talking, maybe that's exactly what the city of North Ridgeville wanted, because when I started there was a whole lot of old folks there. Now the demographics have absolutely changed and we have a bunch of young families in there. And you're starting to see that in our representatives and our mayor. And, we're starting to get younger blood in there and people that are a little more business minded. But we'll have an immediate effect on our city, right? You don't have an immediate effect in Congress. I mean, you can vote for your guy, but he's going in there with 435 other guys and girls that have been there forever, that are controlling Nancy Pelosi. Well, there's some question now as to how much she's actually controlling there, or the squad. But you've got a very small minority of people in Congress that are controlling everything. So, and that's exactly what they're talking about here. It is a whole lot easier for us to control what happens to us and our freedom and our liberty from a local level as opposed to a federal level. And once it gets to that federal level, it's going to get destroyed. And that's where we are right now, I think. I think we're at that point where the republic is getting destroyed because we've allowed the federal level to just get out of control. So.
Concur. For what that's
Question?
worth.
Anybody think I'm wrong? No?
Nope,
All
About
right.
this.
not enough.
Not about this. I'll take it.
You're
That's a win.
100% right.
That's a win. I mean, I certainly, and I don't mean that shitty. I mean, if somebody, has a differing opinion, I'd love to hear it. But that's where I'm at. All right. So why do we have the 10th? Founders knew that the most responsive government was local government, but more than that, the people had greater control over their local governments. 500 protesters in DC doesn't have nearly the effect of 500 protesters at City Hall. And that is it in a nutshell. 500 of y'all show up at DC, not even going to be a newspaper article about it, right? 500 of you show up at your City Hall, news is going to cover it. And it's going to make a difference. Your local elections, even 500 of us at the state level is a whole lot different than 500 in DC. That's why they always try to do these million mom marches, these million, 1 million seems to be the number. That's why they want so many people there, because you need that many people there to even then, does it make a difference ever? Has anything ever changed with our protesting at DC ever? I mean,
No.
I don't think it has.
Nope.
I don't think it ever-
Protesters get labeled. That's about all that changes. Now all of a
Right.
sudden you're an extremist.
Right. I mean, I think the only way to change DC at this point is from the inside, is by
Barbed wire
sending
all
the
around
right
the
people.
Capitol.
What's that?
There's barbed wire all around the Capitol now.
Well, yeah, you can't even get there now. Right.
Yeah, isn't there still National Guard there?
I believe
That's
National
insane.
National Guard. Yeah, you cannot get to the people's house anymore because of all the National Guard and the barbed wire and the razor wire.
I'm really curious on why they're still there. Wasn't that
Well,
was
and I,
supposed to be a
and I guess
temporary
that
thing?
that was my question from the start, is if you are the most popular president to ever have been elected in the history of elections, why and soldiers? If you're
Sounds
the-
like something must be wrong somewhere.
Well, I have a couple of ideas, but it'll have to wait until the post.
if you- I think we all probably have the same ideas. Roger Sherman of Connecticut said, each state, like each individual, had its peculiar habits, usages, and manners, which constituted its happiness. It would not therefore give others a power over this happiness any more than an individual would do when he could avoid it. Again, one of the founders
I
talking
like
about
Roger Sherman.
why the federal government should not be involved, because what is good for Utah is not good for New York. What's good for New York is probably not good for almost anybody else, but
Probably not even good for New York, but they do.
exactly. Yeah, right. Right.
doesn't
What's good for
stop
New
them.
York is not good for New York.
But I mean, that's what we're seeing today is, all the power that they have in Washington, they're trying to force it down the throats of the people in the middle of the country. And we are just not there.
Correct.
That's why people out here refer to this as the flyover zone. Because
Right.
they fly between Washington, New York, and California, and this is just time to kill on a long flight.
Exactly. They have no clue who we are or what we like or what we
Right.
believe in.
They're taking things like what's happening in Oregon with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and they're trying to treat the rest of the United States like apparently how a whole lot of Portland thinks. Well, you can't take how Portland thinks and put that over here in the middle of Iowa. I can tell you that right now. Go
Or
ahead and take Portland and put them down in Alabama somewhere. See what
For
happens.
sure, for sure. That ain't
Going to
gonna
be
fly.
some ass kicking going on in Alabama.
It would be bad,
Happens.
yeah.
Bring them down.
So, as you read these articles from the Atlantic, from and whoever else that may be kind of crapping on the 10th Amendment, just keep in mind that the people that wrote it, this is how they felt. They did not want the federal government involved in their lives at all. Federal government has very limited purposes to defend us, so that, obviously we talked about that, so that if there's a war, you have, like World War II, right? I mean, you got Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. California were to get attacked, California shouldn't be responsible to defend themselves. That's where the national government comes in. The national government comes in and says, look, you attack one, you attack all, and we're all there. And and we defend ourselves. But when it comes to social issues, when it comes to education, and we're going to talk about that stuff here in a minute, but when it comes to that stuff, what's good for California is not good for, well, again, I shouldn't use, that's a bad one. What's good for
The
California is probably-
people, in my
probably not
opinion,
good
the
for California.
people who are calling us extremists because we want to use our authority as voting citizens, they fear us. And because they know that they are abusing the power that they have. That's my opinion.
Maybe.
And so it's easier for them to just broad brush all of us, call us extremists, call us whatever they want to call us, than to admit that they don't know everything that they like to think they know.
I don't know, man. Even scarier than saying that they know they're abusing it is I don't think they do.
I don't think they fear us at all.
I don't, well,
We are rolling over and taking the tummy rub with no problem right now.
and I don't think they know they're abusing it. Remember, man, they see this Constitution as a living, breathing thing. This is how they see their country, and this is how they want their country to be. And
But
and
okay,
they're
so
enacting
show
their
me
will, and we're letting
For
them do
them,
it.
for them, it's a blank check. The
But if the-
Constitution is a blank check to do whatever they want.
but if that's what they believe, show me in the Constitution where it says that shit.
Hey, don't cloud the issue with facts here. Let's not
Well,
confuse this with
But I mean, if
facts.
if they really believed that, why wouldn't they be able to show us where they believe that that's what it says? They
Yeah.
can't do that.
They'll just keep on
Well,
doing what they're doing. And January 6th is proof of that. I mean, yes, January 6th was bad in its own right, but they are really painting it to the extreme just to throw us aside. I mean, that
But
was,
here-
I would say, a minor revolution kind of
When I-
look to it. And they're,
When I hear
that's
them
why
compare
it's
January
so
6th to
extreme.
9/11 is just unbelievable to me.
That's
Right, exactly.
absolutely
Unbelievable. It's disgusting.
unacceptable.
Disgusting.
Part of the problem is they don't believe in the Constitution because they don't like what they think that our nation was founded on.
There you go. So
Yeah.
see, that's what I say. It's
Right.
not based on their interpretation of Constitution. They don't believe in a Constitution.
They believe that the founding fathers were,
Racist.
and they didn't care about, the little people and didn't care about this, society. But it was quite the opposite. And I think that if I don't understand where the disconnect or where this theory came out, because so many nations have held us up as an example from how we were founded. And I don't understand if so many nations think that this was, one of the strongest constitutions and a something that is to be copied, that it would be so bad. And I really honestly believe a lot of it is a power grab and
Well, we're to blame.
wanting to keep people under control and dependent on the government, which is not
Well-
what we were founded on.
And
These
where it
crazy-
changed was the internet and social media.
well,
Everybody had an opinion.
oh, sure. Yeah,
And
because Marxism and all this has always been here, but they've always been forced back underground by the people. We've always said, look, that's not us. We're not going to tolerate this. And then all of a sudden, in the last generation or so, we
Mhm.
started tolerating it. And we would see this stuff come out and we'd
But
laugh
they've
at
been,
it.
but
I
they've
think
been
it-
working on it a long time. It's not
I do.
10 years or 20
Oh,
years.
no, for
They've been
sure.
working on this for 50 years.
Well, and that's what I've always said. Look, right, the left has a long game. And they've been
Mhm.
indoctrinating our kids. They've been bringing up, generations to believe in what they believe in. And we laughed because they were so crazy. Those ideas were so nuts and we just laughed them off. But while we're laughing, they were working and they were working hard. And
But
now we're back on
I'm-
our heels and we're like, what the hell? How did this happen? Well, that's how it happened because we didn't squash this quick enough. We allowed this to get into our schools. We allowed this to get into our universities.
Well,
We've
and on top of
lost-
that, on top of that, you have social media where people protest on their Facebook pages, which doesn't get anything done.
Right.
You know,
Well-
when they have actual people standing at the steps protesting and saying they don't like something, things change more so than if somebody posts something on their Facebook wall about having a grievance about something, and then they get a whole bunch of people that like and comment on the Facebook page. That really doesn't do anything. That doesn't affect change. Actually having boots on the ground in front of the people that are affecting that change, that's where you see progress being made. And they push out the social media, and now
Well,
everybody
especially,
Well,
takes the back seat to action.
There's a couple different pieces there too with the social media, though, is that with the algorithms and advertisers and
That's
so
what I was just
forth,
gonna
they're pushing agendas, and
They are.
things are not being seen
you can get
or
a lot
not
more
being
done
recognized.
as a leftist on social media than you can as a conservative on social media. Without a doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, I put a post up the other day, and I knew it was going to that it was going to trip the algorithms, and it wasn't going to get out there. And, you know, I've been posting quite a bit, just different stuff here and there. And I'm getting 100 likes, and I mean, people are seeing it, right? All my posts. And I posted one about, I said, basically, if you can still read this, I said, President Harris was inaugurated on January 20th, 2021, and she still has not been to the southern border. And the whole point of this was that as long as she hasn't been there, I'm going to have it up. Well, it's only been seen by like 8 people. The post before that, like I said, I mean, 100 people liked it. It's been seen by I don't know how many people, but Facebook just shut that one down. As soon as I use the words Harris and southern border, shut it down. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that
I'm just very sad that people are not true scholars of the Constitution and what the meaning behind what the founders their intent was. And their intent, I mean, we've got amendments that happen as we recognize that there are some wrongs that we need to correct, and that's happened. But I had this discussion with someone else on a news post. I said, the problem is we do have this great divide between the people that are still hanging on to the racism at the extreme right, but then we also have this extreme left that is still pushing the divide by victimizing people. And if we could go back and look at what the Constitution really said, it's saying that everybody is equal and everybody should be policing themselves basically by state, and each smaller community should be governing themselves. And I don't know where the change in study on it happened, because
Well, I
that's what
got a
think.
question about that then. We don't have any high school kids in our house yet. So if anyone on here has any kids in high school, do you know if they are even teaching the Constitution, like the actual going through each
Very little.
constitutional right?
Yes. No, they
No.
did. They did for a while, because Spencer was coming home and talking about the amendments and the different things about, but that was mostly in government class. So, I mean, because
Okay.
there was points where he knew more things than I did, which,
Okay.
give it
Yeah,
to that. But I do give them credit. Not every place does, but they were taking government, and he was listening and paying attention, and he was
I would
sharing
be
That's good.
interested to
information.
know
Okay, Billy
if how
wasn't
they
in
were
government
teaching
yet,
it.
just US history. So
I would be interested to know what the slant was that they were teaching. Are they teaching it from an originalist standpoint? I mean, did you get that feeling that it was an originalist, or was it a living, breathing document? Things should be changed. Stephanie?
I don't know. I'm trying to get him to come down here right now so I can ask him. 'Cause-
Oh, he's gonna.
Oh, no, he
Put
does
him on
it
the
every time
spot.
I ask him a question, but back when this whole thing started, because I knew absolutely nothing, he was like, I know more than mom, which doesn't take much. But they had a lot to do with like learning it, but I'm trying to get him to come down right now just so I can ask him real fast.
While we wait for
Here,
that,
we have
I
a
just
question
had a
for you.
discussion with my 15-year-old, who's a freshman in high school, or just finished freshman year,
I'm not showing you. It's a-
about critical race
it's
theory.
black. We have a
And
question for
I
you.
was trying to explain how they're not actually teaching critical race theory as a course, but how they're
Right.
they're interweaving it into different lessons. And I tried to give him some examples, and he was in disbelief that they would even try something like that. I'm like, dude, look it up, because obviously I'm dad, so
Well, that's how you
He
do it,
takes
though,
things
right?
with a
You
grain of
wake him
salt.
up to it. So that
Right.
one day when he's sitting in school and he's like, hold
Yeah.
on just a
Hold on.
minute.
Right,
That's
but
what
I'll give
this
you
is."
I'll give you a word
Okay.
problem, because this is how
Hey, gentlemen.
they do it.
that's exactly it.
Right,
Okay.
they say like, Bob has 8 cows.
Oh, wait, hey,
And
hold on.
John only
Hold that
has
thought for a
1.
second.
This is not fair. How many should Bob give
Hey,
John so they're equal?
Okay, I think we've got Spencer.
so I'm gonna let you guys ask the question, Jim, so that you're asking it the way you're hoping to get it answered and not through third parties. So he's standing here, he can hear you all talking.
Yeah. So Spencer, when you learned about the Constitution, were they just reading the amendments and saying, hey, look, this is what it says? Or were they talking about the originalist meaning of what it says? Or was it more of a living, breathing, this is what they said, but this is how we could change it. This is how we could make life better. How were they teaching it?
Okay, say.
We did each individual amendment, I guess, by the Bill of Rights at the original, and then went on from there and did projects all the way up to like, I don't remember, but we started with Bill of Rights and then went up to the entire Constitution, pretty much going by like each meaning and stuff and doing like projects on the way for each one.
Okay,
Were
so
were they teaching it in an originalist standpoint?
Were they teaching it like, what did it mean back then and how does it apply to now? Or just how does it apply to now? Like we're applying it to now. So basically how they're just applying it to the current everyday environment we live in. He said, well, no, American government, Spencer, is, but in American government, when they're talking about it, they're trying to figure out, like, are we educating our high school students on what did it mean when the Constitution was originally written and how it was done, or how does it apply? So.
Like in
I
the
think-
Second Amendment is shall not be infringed. Is that shall not be infringed? Or is that, well, they said shall not be infringed, but we
He
think the
said that
government,
He said they're using the modern terminology, not thou shalt not.
well, okay, that's probably told me what I want to know.
There you go.
If they're not using the words that were written,
Right, right there. Yep.
then
There's a
they're
hint.
going to put in their own words about what they believe that the Constitution means or how it should have been written. Then
Well, here's the other question too, then, to ask him. So when the teacher is discussing it and reading it, is he throwing his opinion on what it means, or is it just pretty much this is what it says, interpret it how you want?
Okay, so he's saying it's a class discussion and it's kind of led by the teacher, but it's just an open discussion. So my guess is it might be kind of like a situation like this where people get to throw questions and viewpoints at the teacher, and the teacher's kind of like the moderator.
but the teacher's answers are what we're looking for.
Correct.
Right.
He
Well,
said
Yeah, like
they're-
I want to know when
he said
they
they're just
bring up the
accepting the
Second
kids'
Amendment.
answers.
When they bring up the Second Amendment, is he saying the Second Amendment shall not be infringed, but it doesn't apply to 100-round ammo or magazines?
Right.
Like, is he throwing that kind of stuff in there?
They were just talking about muskets.
Right.
I,
Well, I mean,
I'm guessing that they wouldn't do that so much as once the discussion started, you probably would get more positive reinforcement on a more liberal approach. But
right.
I mean, I'm just making assumptions. I could be wrong.
That would be my guess. Who was your government teacher?
Oh, maybe we shouldn't bring that up on,
Oh, no, why?
Oh,
I mean,
no, he said Shirtliff was his government teacher.
who was it?
Who was it? Shirtliff. He's the track coach.
Yeah, I don't know him.
He's a younger guy.
You know, man.
I was kind of
Mr.
surprised
Abbey-
because I was,
Mr. Abbey was my government teacher, and I regret.
Yeah, I remember him.
I regret every day that I did not just jump in with open arms into his class. You know, I just didn't care back then. God, he knew so much.
Right?
Mr. Abbey was awesome.
God, he was. He was.
in
right.
hindsight, yes.
No, I don't have any problem with saying who. I mean, the guy's on the public dole, man. I mean, he's getting paid by us. I don't have
know.
any problem saying who it is. I'm not going to sit here and defame the guy, but I'd like to know who he is. And I guess, you know what? And if you live in North Ridgeville, and you have kids that are going to school, I would think that you would want to know who he is and what he believes and how he's teaching this.
Absolutely.
And that's part of
Right.
the problem is that we have gotten so busy and we just allow the schools to teach our kids.
Well,
Michael's
And
gonna be a
then-
freshman in high school, so I'll be keeping an eye out.
And then we don't say his name out of fear that we might somehow be offending somebody by
Well, we
bringing
don't
their
want to
name
make,
up.
we don't want to make assumptions or imply that he might be teaching a certain way without having had a discussion with him or
Oh,
seen.
no, for sure. For
Well,
sure.
and
I
you
just wanted to
don't
know what
want-
his name was.
And you don't.
So you're
want
not
the
making
teacher-
an assumption when you got a kid that's taking his class telling you how he feels that he was being taught.
Well,
I'm
I guess I'm
glad to
torn.
hear
I'm
that you're
torn.
teaching.
All right,
You
so
wanna
we're
make sure
we're
the
getting off
teacher
track here a
doesn't
little bit. I guess
retaliate.
I'm gonna bring it back, bring it back onto the 10th. I'll just end that thing with, I guess I'm glad they're talking about it.
Yes.
Hopefully they're not doing more damage than not, but at least they're talking about it. So.
I agree.
So, actually that took us here to the last 15 minutes. So modern day abuses, it's the same three I always talk about. But there's so many more. And after we talk about these, we'll open it up. And if you guys can think of, it's really not that hard to think of abuses, right? Because if the Constitution does not give the federal government authority to do what they're doing, it is a violation of the 10th Amendment. That's it, done. There's no, what if, but hold on, there's none of that. It's
HR 1.
so education initially set up in 1867, right? But it was set up as initially set up as a Department of Education in 1867, and it was there to assist the states in setting up schools and to get good teachers in there. However, by 1868, I believe, they had already gotten nervous that this was going to get out of control, and they relegated it back down to an Office of Education. It was no longer a department. The current department, formed in 1980, currently employs 4,440 employees with an annual budget of $68 billion. Now, 68 billion is in the discretionary. There is other money that comes into them. I know in 2015, don't quote me on the, but they ended up with, it was one of those American Recovery Acts, whatever. They ended up with another $101 billion into their budget. The amount of money that they are bringing in for something that is not constitutional. The amount of employees, 4,440 employees with a department. You show me in the Constitution one place where the word education, where they talk about setting up a Department of Education. That is a states' rights issue. That is up to the states to be doing. But like Jeff said, now the federal government gives the states so much money that they are able to exact their will on the states if the states want to continue to get this federal money. And a lot of the states can't afford to do what they're doing without that federal money. So the states are kind of stuck. Everybody who's screaming that you want, they should shut down the Department of Education, states' rights, be prepared for your state taxes to go up. Just just know that's going to happen. They're going to make up that money somehow.
And I did have an interesting discussion with a friend on this very issue. She brought up a point of states that have higher revenue streams than some of the rural states like Kentucky or versus a California or New York? How do they fill in the gaps and be able to provide as good of an education if they don't have the funds? I mean, they're poor in those states.
You mean that those
Who
poor
says they're
states are
not?
relying on the federal government more than,
Yeah, but who says the education, the quality of education is lacking in the others? Maybe that the larger states who are getting more funds from the government are wasting more, are paying their upper administrators an exorbitant amount of money.
Absolutely. No
But-
question.
Maybe they're
That's-
getting more than they need.
But that's possible, but I did work in school district administration, and I do understand, you know, the districts, right now, Ohio school funding is unconstitutional, the way that it is set up.
unconstitutional through Ohio's constitution?
Yes, through Ohio's constitution.
Why?
Just the way that they're divvying things and relying on property tax or on community taxes. And I get that, because we had a budget for technology. So we were able to provide better computer systems and so forth, where you have, you know, some of the, I would say, rural communities that are not urban, where they're getting a bunch of funds filtered to them. But the rural communities really are lacking in infrastructure. And it does definitely provide a have and have not situation. I wish there was a way that the federal government could maybe even out the cost per pupil, but it does have to depend upon the cost of living in an area. And I don't think that they should still push agendas down, though. I just don't know how we could get that to work so that there is some equity in what students are able to receive, but at the same time, it be more applicable or more appropriate for a school district to have, you know, more local control over what they have or what they are teaching.
But you know what? You also can't do it as a cost per pupil, because in your high populated areas, you're obviously going to get more funds. And with those more funds, you can spend on the infrastructure and the technology, where if you have a rural town with 200 kids in high school, cost per pupil, they're obviously going to get less money.
Well,
the cost of goods doesn't come down just because they have less people.
Right. I understand that. And that's the other thing too. I meant when I said that, you know, you have to base it on the cost of living in an area and so forth. And infrastructure is infrastructure. That's something that should be supported by the federal government, because that's like our roads. That's like our, you know, that keeps commerce going between the states. And I really, truly think that makes sense for them to take care of infrastructure. But when you start talking about equipment in classrooms and, you know, I don't know where that line is or how to make that work to ensure we don't have those have and have nots, that we are giving people, you know.
Well, so my question is, for the past 25 years, we've been throwing more and more money into education. So what is that money going to? What is it paying for?
Well, you got to remember too, it's not the federal Department of Education is not a bunch of teachers sitting around coming up with course curriculum and throwing it out there to the schools, right? It's not. It is, I mean, all the college loans, you know, that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also studying. There are things, civil rights data collection points that school districts have to comply with to get federal money. Title I money that would be federal funds for reading and so forth. So to fill gaps, those are things that the federal government's spending money on.
Has it been effective?
Well, that's a good question, because I think in some areas districts are using the funds that they're allocated appropriately and effectively, and some may not be.
I guess we're back to, for me, where I'm back to, I don't think we should be involved in that at all. I think the federal government should be completely out of it. It's up to the states. Let the state of Ohio look at their Title X stuff. Look at the state of
I
Ohio
agree.
and make sure that the students in Ohio are being treated fairly. I don't need the federal government coming in here and trying to tell me that that we need to handle our education the same way that California needs to handle.
I
their
agree.
education.
I'm with you.
We're different.
I don't agree with Common Core, which is one of the things they're pushing, but I do think that they need to be, the federal government should be providing infrastructure.
Well, and I do think that there's like some of the funds go to programs like the STAR program. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but that is a program for if your children are behind in reading.
It's not necessarily just for being behind. They have STAR in a lot of school districts just as a benchmark formative assessment test that they'll
it's like IEPs and it's typically for students that need a little bit extra something. And I will say that my son in Sheffield, when he was in the public schools, we struggled with it. We just got back here, Spanish was his first language. He was ahead of all of the kids and all of the other subjects except for reading. He was really behind. But then we started using STAR and we switched to St. Mary's, and this is private school, but the way that they do it, I mean, he ended up finishing I think it was 83rd percentile in his peers across the United States in reading, which from going from knowing 8 of the words that he needed to know to that in a year it's insane. So clearly, I would put money into that program because that program, if you get the right teachers, is working.
Well, and that's it. It's an effective software package that a lot of districts use. They use it in different ways, and they may be getting funded federally because they're using it in a specific scenario.
Again, I guess my point is I would rather pay more in my local taxes to fund that program than to have the federal government be involved in it.
Right. And then that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where, it's money that you can actually see being used the right way.
Right.
And the way the states were set up, remember, if Ohio's education system is absolute crap, then people are going to leave Ohio and they're going to go to other states where the education system's not bad. And Ohio's going to get back on board. Ohio's going to say, look, everybody's leaving. What do we got to do to fix this? That's how it's supposed to work.
But again, just remember, I went from a public school where I don't really feel like it was helping to a private school where I felt like, you know what I mean?
You should have absolutely 100% have that choice. 100%. All right, I'm running out of time. I'm going to move on real quick. Healthcare, absolutely horrendous. More than 80,000 employees, annual budget, $1.286 trillion. Not a word of it in the Constitution that they are allowed to be involved in healthcare. Now, healthcare, when you're talking about HHS for the federal level, is 11 different departments. You would have to go and look at them all, but welfare is part of that. It's health and human services. So they have put everything into one. Social welfare is another thing that I have always, it is the bane of my existence, man. There's no reason why the federal government should be involved in social welfare at all. The states should take care of the states. It used to be that churches would take care of their own communities, cities would take care of their own cities, right? Maybe the state will throw in a couple bucks here and there, but there is absolutely no reason why the federal government should be taking my federal tax dollars and sending it out of my state to go and pay for some guy in Michigan who doesn't want to work. It's beyond me that we are allowing this to even happen. How to fix it? I don't know. I mean,
there's so much money to be made in healthcare, even with people at the federal level. I mean, this is one of the biggest You said it yourself, bane of my existence. I mean, this is their cash cow.
It's because we've
It's
gotten
healthcare.
lazy. People have
Well, it's
gotten
also
lazy.
so
and
easy. I mean, the proof is in the pudding this last year and a half. It's
That's
so
my point.
easy
You go out right
to
now
say
and everybody
pandemic,
blames
boom, and then
everything
big pharma
on,
is involved in everything. I mean, this
I-
past year has been the case to show that.
Okay, back when, Obamacare was being pushed through the House, I said then, and I believe to this day, they're trying to put a patch on a problem that needs to be fixed from the standpoint of competition. Open up competition between the insurance companies and all this bullshit goes away. But the way our healthcare system is set up right now, I can't buy a policy out of Alabama. So it's all price fixing. It's 100% price fixing.
It won't get fixed either until I'm not sure how to fix it, but it's not going to get it fixed because there's so much money being made at the top level.
Because
I
you
mean,
have to
blow your
have
mind.
competition. If
They
you
don't want
don't have
competition.
exactly, that's my point. So this whole Obamacare thing and the whole healthcare thing was not going to fix anything. The problem is if you don't have competition, you can set whatever price you want for healthcare. And if I have to go to my doctor and pay $800 for an MRI, and you can go and pay $5,000 for yours, neither of us have a choice, right? Because there's no competition. It's bullshit.
Yep. And I know somebody who was trying to fix that, but he didn't get reelected.
Who's that?
45, man.
Oh.
Okay, so I have a question on this. So I just want, I guess, opinions because I have my own on this, but I am very curious as to opinions on this. I want to know why it's okay for me to get, we're talking about Department of Human Services or whatever. Why is it okay for me to have to get tested, to get a job, to get drug tested? But how is it invading anyone's privacy? How is it like breaking their constitutional rights? Because that's what's thrown around for somebody to have to get drug tested to be on welfare.
Amen.
No, Ohio's an at-will state, right?
Because
So
you're
it's up
white
to
and
anybody.
you're racist.
As far as an employer goes, anybody can, check your see if you're taking drugs or not. I mean, Ohio's
Yeah,
at
but
will.
correct.
That is controlled at the state
I don't
level.
have a problem with them. I have a problem with the fact that they don't test for somebody to get on welfare.
No, that I do agree with. Yes, I missed that part.
So I'm
sorry.
just curious if somebody can explain to me, because the term used is it violates the constitutional rights. I'm curious what right is that violating?
Because that would be discriminatory to stop somebody from getting assistance.
Who said it violates the Constitution?
Oh my gosh. Have you not seen it? It's all over. Like anytime you bring it up, it's violating the constitutional rights.
Well, that's
No,
that's a
not.
point. That's a point brought up by people who are just uninformed.
Right.
I mean, that's exactly why you carry your pocket constitution around. When people say that, you hand it to them.
Yeah, and say, show me.
I was just, no, we could talk about this later. I'm
Well,
trying
it's the same scenario when somebody says something's racist when it's not. Just because they say it's racist doesn't mean that it's racist. So just because somebody's saying that it's unconstitutional doesn't mean that it's unconstitutional. That's just what they believe, or that's the ammunition that they're trying to use to
They want to shut you
their point
down.
across.
Maybe they're just calling a spade a spade.
Oh,
So so I guess I'm just curious as to then why we can't get that passed, because I have known people that have quit their job where I've worked and gone and gotten on welfare and were drug users. I don't understand. They can just choose to stay at home.
Somebody else needs to answer.
Well, Well, I mean, there's no answer for that right now. Like, why? I mean, yeah, why is it? Well, you know, ask the
Just 'cause
people
it is.
who ask the people who set the requirements to qualify for that. I mean, if anything, I mean, so I make too much money to be able to qualify for that. That's discriminatory. You ask me.
All right, sorry, I was a little away from you guys for a minute. I'm looking for it was an older article in 2003 that I think will probably answer a whole lot of these questions. It was by Robert Nadelson. He wrote it for the Nevada Law Journal. I found the article, but the part I'm looking for, I couldn't find. I will send it to Renee and have her post it in the document section. It talks about the enumeration of the states and what the federal government should be allowed to get away with and what they should not be allowed to get away with. Robin, as far as you go, man, that's the $1 million question right now, right? First off, we need to get the federal government out of welfare, and we need to let Ohio start dealing with unemployment and let Ohio start dealing with welfare. The federal government has no reason at all to be involved in it. There are no constitutional issues when it comes to that. I don't understand. Like Jeff said, I mean, that's just somebody who's completely ignorant and doesn't understand what the Constitution actually says. But we would have, like we said before, a whole lot more control over this stuff if we keep it at the local level, right? If we keep it at the local level, we can control. We're talking to these people, right? Our representatives. I mean, you look at Manning, he still has law offices here. He still lives here with us. Our state rep, he still lives here. We still see him at the stores, right? I went to Wolfie's with him the other night. When's the last time you hung out? When's the last time you saw somebody that wasn't being treated like royalty, who is a federal congressperson, right? Just walking around a store. Yeah, you just don't see it. We had Gonzalez the other night. I mean, you would have thought the guy was a king. He had an entourage with him, and he had the police protecting him. And it's hard to get anything done when we leave this stuff at the federal level. And until we start fighting back with these 10th Amendment issues and we get this stuff taken away, look, I'm all for it. Everybody says we can't just take Department of Education. We can't just end it, right? Oh my God, what would the schools do? We'll get through, right? I'm all for just ending it. I wasn't at first. I'm like, well, we need to step down. We need to, look, man, next president, just get in there and end it. There's no constitutional protection for them. I mean, you show me in Article 1 where the government's allowed to set up the Department of Education. They're not. It is absolutely unconstitutional.
It would actually be
and
fun to see, them ending that education department, and then
End
all
it
of a
all.
sudden, and all of a sudden, the
welfare,
people there
end everything.
in those positions, they're being paid to do what they're supposed to do. All of a sudden, they have to think for themselves and figure it out instead of having their hand held by the federal government.
well,
And they
and
would.
you put the pressure on the local officials that we elect and say, hey, you know what? We don't give a shit what they're trying to pull in Washington. We hired you to do this. Make it happen.
Well, and that's Joe Blystone. I was telling you guys about him for Ohio, the governor. That's his
Beard
big
man.
thing. Joe Blystone is like, look, Washington, and this is actually his words when I was there listening to him speak. He says, Washington, you stay over there. We don't need you here in Ohio. If we need you, we'll let you know we need you, and then we'll invite you in.
Right.
But until then, you stay over there, and we're going to take care of this over here. And
Yep.
buddy, I'm willing to give that a shot. I mean, we're so far out of bounds right now. All right, so we went a little over. Anything?
This conversation, I think it probably brought out more than you expected, but I think this is all everything we've discussed tonight, I think was really 10th Amendment.
Yeah, no, I
worthy.
really feel good about it. I feel good about
Absolutely, it was, yeah.
This was
It was a great discussion.
Absolutely. Now I wish, you know what, and I'll look into it. I'll see if, maybe we could have somebody come in here that knows how to fix this. I just don't know how to fix it. Short of, I know we have to fix it from the inside out, right? We got to put the right people in there, but I don't know what the answer is. Do we step down? Do we have somebody in there just ends it? And the problem is that they're so in the pocket of the unions.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not going to be able to just, I mean, anybody who goes in there, although if it's a conservative, it doesn't really matter because the unions aren't going to back them anyway, but.
But I mean,
Yeah.
every state is different too. I mean, like I'm thinking of Florida here where I live. We don't have state income tax.
Mhm.
So I need to find out how much of the federal money influences the
that's
decisions
one-
here,
Yeah,
right?
and that could be, maybe that's one of the things that Florida would have to look at, right? Maybe in
Right.
order for us to get back to what the Constitution says. And, if we did away with the Department of Education, maybe Florida has to go to an income tax now.
Right.
But know that all
Yes.
that money stays with you. All that
Well,
money is
what-
helping your state. You
What,
have to
what
pay to
does,
have nice things.
what does Florida have? Do they have property tax and,
Sales tax.
Sales tax.
Yeah, we have
They're-
Yeah.
sales tax, property
They're making a
tax.
ton of money off tourists in the hotel.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they probably have a lot of revenue streams there. So,
Oh, they do. And you know what?
Yeah.
Tennessee's the same way. Tennessee,
I know,
You know,
but I
they
mean,
tout
it's
that
just-
they
it's
have-
one of those things where I really don't know what percentage of our money is coming from the federal government versus local and state.
well, find that
That
out.
is your homework for next week.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. That's
But
what I'm
yeah,
saying.
all these states that say they don't have income tax, because I was looking at Tennessee, it's the same way. I mean, Tennessee makes their money up on
Oh,
sales
God,
tax.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
they're not, these states that say, hey, no income tax, that's all fine and well, but they're getting you other places.
Oh, absolutely. Sales tax is crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
Florida's lucky in that they're a tourist destination. They're funding a whole lot of stuff on the backs of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Tennessee's got liquor.
Well, yes, we listen to me. I haven't even
Give me
retired yet.
some
I'm like,
bourbon.
yes, we do. All right. So I will see you guys over in the post. Not for long though. I think I might be working tomorrow. Let's see.
Uh-oh.
I have to shave that face.
You gonna be over at Safetyville? Because my grandkids are at Safetyville this week and they'll be at the
I
police
will
station
not. I will
tomorrow.
not. We will have a dog over there on Friday though.
Okay, cool.
I will not.
Jason Carter will be at the police station tomorrow with Officer
Who?
Cross,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
our grandkids.
Yep. All right. I will see you guys over in the post. Renee, you'll get that set up. Are you gonna
I'll
be around
post
for
it
a
up.
little bit? All
Yep.
right.
All
cool.
right.
all right.
All right. I'll
See
see
you
you
in a
guys.
bit.